The small scout ship drifted silently at the edge of the Sol system. Inside, 3 blue-skinned aliens stared at their viewing screens with all 4 of their eyes wide open. What they saw made no sense. According to their readings, the 3rd planet was full of life that should not exist. "Run the scans again," ordered Clixtar, the senior observer. His voice trembled slightly as he spoke. Drenvox, the chief science officer, tapped the controls with her 6-fingered hands. "I have run it 3 times already. The readings are the same. These creatures should not be alive." The 3rd alien, Zeph Maul, looked up from his own screen. "What are they?" "They call themselves humans," said Drenvox, "and they are impossible." Clixtar moved to the main console. The Galactic Concordat had sent them to map this forgotten corner of space. Finding intelligent life was unexpected, but finding life that broke all known biological rules was deeply troubling. "Send a report to Central Command," he said. "Mark it urgent. We need guidance." 5 days later, the aliens watched a small Earth ship approach their position. The humans had detected them and sent a greeting vessel. On the main screen, 2 humans appeared. The male wore a blue uniform with silver pins on the shoulders. "This is Captain Adam Wright of the Earth Defense Fleet. We come in peace. Please identify yourselves." The female next to him smiled. "I am Lieutenant Olivia Bennett, Communications Officer. We welcome you to Earth space." Clixtar and his crew stared in fascination. These humans moved with an ease that defied the heavy gravity of their world. Their skin was so thin they could see blood vessels underneath. Yet somehow they lived. "Greetings," Clixtar replied after activating the translator. "We are observers from the Galactic Concordat, a union of peaceful species. We request permission to establish diplomatic relations." What Clixtar didn't say was that Central Command had ordered them to gather as much information as possible about these strange beings. The report he had sent had caused great concern among Concordat leaders. 2 weeks later, a larger Concordat vessel arrived. Earth welcomed the aliens with open arms, eager to join a galactic community. The humans set up a diplomatic center in a city called Geneva, where representatives from both species could meet. Dr. Eric Mason walked down the hallway of the newly built Interspecies Exchange Center. As Earth's leading xenobiologist, he had been studying the aliens since their arrival. Something about them bothered him. They seemed overly interested in human medical records and constantly asked questions about human biology. "Dr. Mason," called a voice behind him. He turned to see Commander Susan Parker walking toward him. Her uniform was crisp and her expression serious. "Commander," he nodded. "What brings you here?" "The same thing that brings you, I suspect. Our visitors are asking too many questions about the wrong things." They entered a small meeting room and closed the door. Commander Parker pulled out a tablet and showed it to Mason. "They've requested complete medical histories, detailed information about human regeneration rates, pain thresholds, and environmental tolerances. This isn't standard diplomatic exchange." Mason frowned. "No, it isn't. It's more like they're studying us as specimens." Meanwhile, aboard the Concordat vessel, Clixtar was preparing his latest report. The data they had collected was disturbing. Humans could survive radiation levels that would kill most sentient species. They could heal from injuries that would be fatal to any normal creature. They could eat almost anything without immediate harm, and they could function in environmental conditions that should be lethal. "These cannot be natural beings," he said to Drenvox. "No species evolves this way naturally." Drenvox nodded in agreement. "Their bone density alone is remarkable. They can break bones and continue functioning. They feel pain but can ignore it. They replace their blood supply in days. And their young—" "What about their young?" asked Clixtar. "Their children are even more resilient. And they learn at an alarming rate. I believe they were designed this way." Clixtar finished his report. "The Concordat High Council needs to know. These humans must be bioengineered weapons, created by some ancient advanced civilization." He sent the message, marked with the highest priority. The response came faster than expected. The Concordat was sending a full scientific and military delegation. Humans were now classified as a potential threat. On Earth, The first signs of trouble appeared when Adam Wright noticed the aliens becoming more secretive. The friendly exchanges of information slowed. The aliens began scanning Earth with devices they hadn't declared to Earth authorities. Adam brought his concerns to Olivia as they walked through a garden outside the exchange center. "They watched me lift a box yesterday," he said quietly. "A simple box, maybe 50 pounds. They seemed shocked I could carry it." Olivia nodded. "One of them asked me how long I could hold my breath. When I said about 2 minutes, he nearly dropped his equipment." "Something isn't right," Adam said. "It's like they think we're monsters." Inside the exchange center, Dr. Mason had convinced Susan Parker to help him access the aliens' communication network. What they found confirmed their worst fears. "They think we're weapons," Mason whispered, staring at the translated text. "Bioengineered nightmares created by someone called the Architects," Susan read over his shoulder. "This is insane. We're just humans." "Not to them," Mason replied. "Look at this list. Our endurance, our ability to eat almost anything, how we heal from injuries, how we handle pain." He looked up. "To them, we're impossible. We need to tell someone," Susan said. "Who?" "If we reveal we've accessed their private communications, it could create an incident. We need more information first." Across the city, a junior alien researcher named Zeph Moll was assigned to observe human children. The young scientist watched with growing horror as children played in a park, falling down, crying, then getting up to play again minutes later. One child fell from a height that should have broken bones, yet the small human was running again after just a few minutes of tears. "They heal too quickly," Zeph Moll recorded in his notes. "They learn from each injury. The young ones are being trained through controlled damage." The concept made him feel ill, but the evidence seemed clear to his alien understanding. Humans were designed, not evolved. By the time Zeph Moll returned to the Concordat vessel, Clickstar had received new orders. The Galactic Concordat had officially classified humans as nightmare-class bioweapons based on their preliminary findings. A full containment protocol was being considered. As night fell over Earth, billions of humans slept peacefully, unaware that among the stars, they had just been labeled as the most dangerous species in the galaxy, not for what they had done, but simply for what they were. The enormous chamber of the Galactic Concordat High Council hummed with nervous energy. 200 alien representatives from across the galaxy had gathered for an emergency session. At the center of the room stood Clickstar, his blue skin pale, with stress as he presented his findings. "The evidence is clear," he said, gesturing to the holographic display. "These humans possess biological capabilities that defy natural evolution." The display showed images of human abilities: a firefighter carrying a child through flames, a soldier continuing to fight despite serious wounds, a diver holding their breath underwater for minutes. "No natural species shows this combination of traits," continued Clickstar. "They can withstand radiation levels that would kill most of us. They can break bones and continue functioning. They can consume substances that would poison any normal creature." Senior Counselor Vrex Newell leaned forward. "What do you propose, Observer Clickstar?" "The classification is obvious," said Clickstar. "Humans are nightmare-class bioweapons, created long ago by an advanced civilization, possibly the Architects." The chamber erupted in worried conversations. Nightmare class was the highest threat level in the Concordat system. It was reserved for species engineered specifically for warfare. "Order," called Vrex Newell, banging a ceremonial staff. "We will proceed with the evidence classification." One by one, the council reviewed the 5 main traits that had led to the classification. First was human endurance. Humans could continue functioning despite severe sleep deprivation, injury, and environmental stress. The council watched footage of marathon runners pushing their bodies far beyond what should be possible. Second was their omnivorous adaptability. Humans could process almost any organic material as food and even derive pleasure from substances toxic to other species. The aliens were particularly disturbed by human consumption of capsaicin, alcohol, and caffeine. Third was pain tolerance. Humans could override pain signals through psychological means. The Council viewed medical procedures where humans remained conscious despite enormous pain. Fourth was their regenerative abilities. Humans healed from injuries that would be fatal to most species. The Council was shocked by images of regrown skin, mended bones, and recovered brain function after trauma. Finally, there was psychological resilience. Humans exhibited pack-bonding behaviors with non-human entities and could withstand extreme isolation. The Council was particularly disturbed by humanity's ability to form emotional attachments to machines, plants, and alien species. "The vote will now commence," announced Rex Null. "Should humans be classified as nightmare-class bioweapons?" The result was nearly unanimous. Only 3 council members voted against the classification. "It is decided," said Rex Null. "Earth is now under observation protocol. All technology sharing is restricted. Containment options will be evaluated." Meanwhile on Earth, Dr. Natalie Rivers sat in her office at the Diplomatic Center, reviewing intercepted communications. As the head of Earth's diplomatic team, she had insisted on monitoring all alien transmissions. What she read now filled her with dread. "Greg, you need to see this," she said as Ambassador Greg Howard entered her office. Greg Howard was a tall man with a calm demeanor that had served him well in his diplomatic career, but even his composure slipped as he read the translated message. "They think we're weapons?" he asked in disbelief. "Engineered bioweapons?" Natalie nodded. "According to this, they've officially classified us as nightmare class because of our basic biology." Greg paced the room. "This is absurd. We're just humans. We evolved naturally on Earth." "Not from their perspective," said Natalie. "Look at the traits they list. To them, we shouldn't exist naturally." Greg stopped pacing. "We need to inform the Defense Council immediately." As Earth's leaders met to discuss this alarming development, junior researcher Zeph Mull was continuing his assigned study of human children. He sat on a bench in a playground, recording observations with growing unease. A small girl fell from a climbing structure, scraping her knee. She cried briefly, then after a comforting word from her mother, returned to play almost immediately. Zeph Mull noted how quickly the child recovered from both pain and emotional distress. Another child, a boy of about 6 years, was learning to read. Zeph Mull watched in fascination as the child sounded out words, made mistakes, corrected himself, and improved visibly over just 1 hour. The speed of learning was remarkable. Most disturbing to Zeph Mull was how the children interacted with a small dog in the park. They treated the animal as if it were another child, speaking to it, playing with it, showing attachment. This ability to form bonds with other species seemed bizarrely advanced. "They are even more weaponized than adults," Zeph Mull muttered into his recorder. "Accelerated learning, heightened pattern recognition, and a disturbing tendency to form emotional bonds with potentially dangerous entities." But as he watched the children laugh and play, a strange feeling grew inside him. These small humans did not seem like weapons. They seemed vulnerable, innocent, and joyful. Could weapons show such genuine emotion? Back at the Concordat vessel, Drenvox was studying human medical records. The more she learned, the more convinced she became of humanity's artificial nature. "Look at this," she said to Clixtar, displaying a record of a human who had survived having half their liver removed. The organ regrew to nearly full size in months. "This is engineered regeneration." Clixtar nodded gravely. "The High Council is considering containment options. They fear what might happen if these humans discover their true purpose." "What true purpose?" asked Drenvox. "As weapons," replied Clixtar. "The architects must have created them for war, then abandoned them here on this harsh planet. What if something activates them? What if they remember what they were made for?" On Earth, the Defense Council meeting had turned tense. Admiral Peter Johnson slammed his fist on the table. "We should prepare for conflict," he insisted. "If they see us as weapons, they might try to neutralize us." "We can't jump to military action," countered Greg Howard. "This is a misunderstanding, not an act of war." Dr. Natalie Rivers spoke up. "I agree with Greg. The Concordat fears what we might be, not what we've done. We need to prove we evolved naturally. How do we prove that? Asked the president. Have an idea, said Dr. Eric Mason, who had been invited to the meeting due to his expertise. We need to get access to their historical records. If they've encountered engineered species before, we can show how we differ. The president nodded. Make it happen. In the meantime, we'll increase our defensive readiness, but avoid any provocative actions. As the meeting concluded, no one noticed. A small concordate probe monitoring their building from high above. The decision to classify humans had been made. Now the question was what to do about the supposed weapons living on the third planet of this unimportant star. 6 months passed since first contact with the Galactic Concordate. The early excitement of meeting aliens had faded into worry. The Concordate ships now orbited Earth in greater numbers. They called themselves friends, but their actions showed fear. Captain John Miller stood by the window of his ship, looking at the red surface of Mars below. His mission was simple: patrol the outer edges of Earth's solar system and report any unusual activity. But what he found on the dark side of Mars was anything but usual. Captain, called Security Chief Laura Walsh from the command station. The scan is complete. It's definitely not one of ours. Miller turned away from the window. Show me. On the main screen appeared images of a small base built into a Martian crater. It was cleverly hidden, but their new scanners had detected it anyway. The design was clearly alien. Concordate? Asked Miller. Yes, sir, said Walsh. And look at this. Energy reading. Something big is happening in there. Miller frowned. He had been told all Concordate activities would be open and transparent. This secret base violated their agreement. Prepare a team, he ordered. We're going to take a closer look. Hours later, Miller led a small team across the red Martian surface. They wore special suits that hid them from standard sensors. As they approached the hidden base, they could see it was larger than they first thought. No guards outside, whispered Walsh through the suit radio. Overconfident or understaffed? Maybe both, replied Miller. Let's find a way in. They discovered a small maintenance entrance that their tools could open. Inside, they moved silently through dim corridors until they heard voices. Following the sound, they came to a large room with viewing windows. Through the glass, they saw something that made their blood run cold. Humans were being kept in clear cells. Some were awake and looked afraid. Others appeared to be sleeping. Concordate scientists moved between the cells, taking notes and samples. They're experimenting on our people, Walsh said, her voice shaking with anger. Miller raised his hand for silence. They needed more than just what they could see. They needed proof. Find their data center, he ordered. We need their research files. Walsh nodded and pointed to a door on the far side of the room. Miller and his team carefully made their way there, avoiding the alien scientists. The door led to a small room filled with alien computers. Can you access them? Miller asked his tech specialist, Officer Frank Harris. Harris studied the alien technology. I think so. The translator should work on their computer language too. He connected their devices to the alien system. Minutes passed as he worked. I'm in, he finally said. Downloading everything now. As the files transferred to their devices, they heard an alarm sound. They had been discovered. Time to go, Miller said. Walsh, clear us a path to the exit. They fought their way out, stunning several alien guards with their weapons. No one wanted to kill the aliens. That would only make things worse. Back in their ship, they sped away from Mars before the Concordate could send ships after them. What did we get? Miller asked once they were safely away. Harris displayed the files on the main screen. Most were in alien language, but the translation program worked quickly. It's worse than we thought, Harris said as he read. They believe we were created by someone they call the Architects, a mythical race that allegedly engineered weapon species during an ancient galactic war. Weapon species? Asked Walsh. Harris nodded grimly. They think we're dormant weapons waiting to be activated. That's why they were experimenting on those people, trying to find our trigger mechanism. Miller stared at the screen. We need to get this to Earth immediately. Back on Earth, Dr. Aaron Phillips sat across from the Concordate representative named Brenvex. The alien had requested this private meeting, and Phillips was curious why. "I have a proposal for you, Doctor," said Brenvex, his four eyes blinking in sequence. "My government is willing to share advanced medical technology with you." Phillips raised an eyebrow. "That's generous. What do you want in return?" "Only some genetic samples from various human populations, for research purposes." Phillips kept his face neutral, but inside his mind was racing. The Concordate had been restricting technology sharing for months. Now suddenly they wanted to trade for human genetic samples? "I'll need to discuss this with my superiors," Phillips said carefully. "Of course," replied Brenvex, "but please keep our discussion private for now." After the alien left, Phillips immediately called Intelligence Officer Karen Nelson. "They asked for genetic samples," he told her, "in exchange for medical technology." "It fits with what we just learned," said Nelson. "Captain Miller found a secret Concordate base on Mars. They're studying captured humans, Karen. They think we're some kind of bioweapons." Phillips felt cold. "What do we do?" "Play along," said Nelson. "Give them samples, but let's manipulate the data. We need to buy time while we figure out what's really going on." Meanwhile, strange reports were coming in from around the world. Daniel Ross, a mining engineer, had survived a mine collapse that should have killed him. He had been trapped for 9 days without food or water, yet when rescuers found him, he was weak but alive. Medical tests showed he had entered some kind of suspended animation that doctors couldn't explain. In another case, a woman named Lisa Green had been exposed to radiation levels that should have been fatal, yet she showed minimal symptoms and recovered quickly. The Concordate observers noted these cases with growing alarm. To them, these were signs that the human weapons were beginning to activate. On the Concordate mothership, Klixtar reviewed these reports with dread. "The dormancy period may be ending," he told the High Council via secure transmission. "We're seeing humans display abilities beyond even their normal parameters." "Your recommendation?" asked Senior Counselor Vrex Newell. "Accelerate the containment plan," said Klixtar without hesitation. "If these weapons fully activate, they could spread beyond their planet. The risk is too great." Vrex Newell nodded solemnly. "The containment fleet is already on its way. We cannot allow these bioweapons to threaten the galaxy." As night fell over Earth, Zeph Maul sat alone in his quarters, troubled by conflicting thoughts. His research on human children continued to challenge the weapon classification. Today, he had watched a small boy share his lunch with a hungry classmate. The simple act of kindness seemed at odds with the nature of a weapon. "What if we're wrong?" he whispered to himself. But questioning the High Council's decision was dangerous. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that a terrible mistake was being made. Elsewhere on Earth, Captain Miller delivered the stolen files to the Defense Council. As the human leaders reviewed the Concordate's plans, a grim silence fell over the room. Time was running out for humanity to prove they weren't the monsters the aliens feared they were. Dr. Aaron Phillips worked through the night in his laboratory. For weeks, he had been secretly studying the Concordate's database, searching for answers. The aliens had provided him with access to study their medical technology, not realizing he was using it to learn about them instead. Karen Nelson sat across from him, watching as data scrolled across his screen. Dark circles under her eyes showed she hadn't slept much either. "I think I found something," Phillips said suddenly, sitting up straight. "Look at this." Nelson moved to his side of the desk. On the screen was a report about planetary classifications. "The Concordate divides worlds into categories based on their environmental conditions," Phillips explained. "Most inhabited planets in their records are classified as Standard B or Standard A environments." "And Earth?" asked Nelson. "That's just it," said Phillips. "Earth is classified as an Extreme D environment. According to their records, no sentient species has ever evolved naturally on an Extreme D world." Nelson's eyes widened. "So they assume we must be artificial because no one could naturally evolve in our environment?" "Exactly," said Phillips. "To them, Earth is a death world. High radiation from our sun, Extreme temperature variations, diverse pathogens, numerous predators, natural disasters, conditions that don't exist on most inhabited worlds. He pulled up more data. Look at the other species in the Concordat. They all evolved on stable, peaceful worlds. Their bodies never needed to develop the resilience that humans have. So we're not bioengineered at all, said Nelson. We're just the product of Earth's harsh evolutionary pressures. Phillips nodded. It's Earth that made us what we are, not some ancient engineers. The revelation spread quickly through human leadership. Admiral Heather Cruz called an emergency meeting with Earth's top officials to discuss this finding. If Dr. Phillips is right, she said to the gathered leaders, then we can use this misunderstanding to our advantage in negotiations. How? Asked the president. The Concordat fears us because they think we're designed weapons. If we can prove we evolved naturally in response to Earth's conditions, they might reclassify us as less of a threat. Before they could develop this plan further, alarming news arrived. Massive Concordat ships had appeared at the edge of the solar system, far more than the diplomatic vessels already in orbit around Earth. They're positioning for containment, said Admiral Cruz grimly. They believe humans have discovered their true purpose as weapons. We need to attempt peaceful negotiation one more time, the president decided. Send diplomat Jason Gardner to their command ship immediately. Meanwhile, Zeph Mull had made a dangerous decision. He approached Dr. Phillips in secret, away from Bio, the watchful eyes of his superiors. I believe your people are being wrongly classified, he told the surprised human. I've been studying your children. They show empathy, cooperation, and kindness, traits no weapon would need. Phillips was cautious. Why are you telling me this? Because a great injustice is about to happen, said Zeph Mull. The containment fleet has arrived. The Concordat plans to isolate your planet perhaps for centuries. Can you help us? Asked Phillips. Zeph Mull's 4 eyes blinked nervously. There is one possibility. The architects were real, but they weren't engineers as we believe. They were preservationists who traveled the galaxy cataloging species. How do you know this? I found references in ancient texts during my research. The Concordat Central Archives might contain the truth about Earth and humans, if we could access those records. Phillips immediately contacted Karen Nelson with this information. Together with Zeph Mull, they formed a desperate plan. While diplomat Jason Gardner attempted to negotiate with the Concordat fleet commanders, Phillips and Nelson prepared to accompany Zeph Mull to the main Concordat vessel, under the pretense of sharing research findings. This is extremely dangerous, Nelson warned as they boarded a shuttle to the alien ship. If they discover our true purpose, we'll be imprisoned or worse. We have no choice, said Phillips. The containment fleet will be fully in position within days. Aboard the massive Concordat ship, Zeph Mull led them through corridors filled with aliens who stared at the humans with mixed fear and curiosity. They reached a secure terminal where Zeph Mull could access the ancient archives. Keep watch, he told Nelson while he and Phillips began searching the database. Hours passed as they combed through thousands of years of records. Finally, Phillips let out a small gasp. I found it, he whispered. The true history. The records revealed that the architects were indeed an ancient species, but they were not engineers who created weapons. They were scientists and preservationists who had studied life throughout the galaxy. They had visited Earth millions of years ago, long before humans evolved. Look at this, said Phillips, pointing to an ancient warning marker. The architects left this about Earth. The marker described Earth as an extreme evolutionary crucible, with a note that any species surviving there would develop unusual traits. The architects had not modified humans. They had simply studied Earth and left warning markers about the planet's harsh conditions. Over thousands of years, these warnings had been misinterpreted. We need to get this information to Earth immediately, said Phillips. But as they prepared to leave, alarms began to sound throughout the ship. On the bridge, the Concordat commanders had received disturbing news. Human military vessels were moving into defensive positions around Earth. They are preparing for conflict, said Clickstar. The weapons are activating just as we feared. Begin containment procedures, ordered the fleet commander. We cannot allow these bioweapons to threaten the galaxy. Back on Earth, Admiral Cruz was indeed preparing defenses, but only as a precaution. We won't fire first, she told her officers, but we must be ready if diplomacy fails. In the archives room, Phillips, Nelson, and Zeph Maul were surrounded by armed Concordat security forces. You are under arrest for unauthorized access to classified information, said the security chief. As they were led away, Phillips managed to activate his communication device. Send the files, he whispered to it. The data began transferring to Earth systems. On the bridge of the Concordat command ship, diplomat Jason Gardner made one last appeal. We are not weapons, he insisted to the assembled alien leaders. We are simply the children of a harsh world that taught us to survive against all odds. The Concordat leaders looked unconvinced, but at that moment, screens throughout the ship began displaying the ancient records that Phillips had found, the truth about the architects and their study of Earth. Someone had hacked the ship's systems to broadcast the information. In the eyesight's security bay, Zeph Maul turned one eye toward Nelson, who gave him a small nod. The Concordat fleet hovered at the edge of Earth's defenses as the truth slowly spread through their ranks. Humans weren't weapons after all. They were survivors. The unlikely children of what the galaxy considered a death world. Silence filled the bridge of the Concordat command ship. The ancient records discovered by Dr. Phillips continued to display on every screen. Clickstar stood frozen, his blue skin paling as he read the truth about humans. Is this verified? Asked the fleet commander, breaking the silence. A technician checked the data. The records are authentic. They come from our oldest archives. Diplomat Jason Gardner watched the aliens carefully. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Everything now depended on how the Concordat would respond to this new information. Meanwhile, Admiral Heather Cruz received word that the ancient records had been broadcast to all Concordat vessels. She immediately called her officers together. Now is our chance, she said. While they're processing this information, we need to show them who we really are. She turned to her communications officer. Prepare to launch Operation Truthbearer. Soldiers, Sam Cooper and Maria Rodriguez had trained for months for this mission. They were among Earth's best not because they were the strongest or fastest, but because they best represented humanity's spirit. Now they stood ready in their shuttle, preparing to launch. Remember, said Cooper to his team, we're not going as warriors. We're going as messengers. Rodriguez nodded. Let's show them who humans really are. Their shuttle launched from Earth, heading directly toward the center of the Concordat fleet. It carried no weapons, only broadcasting equipment and the most complete record of human history ever assembled. Back on the Concordat command ship, Dr. Phillips, Karen Nelson, and Zeph Maul remained under guard, but the mood had shifted. The guards now looked uncertain rather than threatening. The High Council is convening an emergency session, one guard told them. Your evidence is being reviewed. Phillips looked at Zeph Maul. Thank you for helping us. The alien researcher's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. I only did what was right. I saw the truth in your children's eyes. No weapon shows such joy in simple existence. A communication alert sounded. The guards checked their devices. An unarmed human shuttle is approaching the fleet, a guard announced. They are requesting permission to board and address the High Council directly. In the shuttle, Cooper and Rodriguez prepared the broadcast that would go to every ship in the Concordat fleet. They had one chance to change the aliens' minds about humanity. Permission granted, came the surprising response. The High Council will hear these humans. Their shuttle docked with the massive Concordat flagship. Cooper and Rodriguez stepped out unarmed, wearing simple Earth uniforms without rank or decoration. They were escorted to the council chamber where hundreds of alien representatives had gathered. Senior Counselor Vrex Null addressed them. We have reviewed the evidence about your species. Speak now and help us understand. Cooper stepped forward. We are not weapons. We are survivors. He activated a holographic display showing Earth's history, its ice ages, meteor strikes, devastating plagues, and natural disasters. This is the planet that shaped us, he continued. Everything you find strange about us was necessary for our survival. We can endure pain because our world is filled with dangers. We can eat almost anything because food sources were often scarce. We heal quickly because injuries were common. Rodriguez took over. We don't deny we're different from you. Our world made us strong, but it also taught us compassion. She showed images of humans helping each other after disasters, caring for the sick, protecting the vulnerable. A weapon only destroys, she said, but humans build, we create, we heal, we protect. The council chamber was silent as the images played. Many aliens looked troubled or thoughtful. Some seemed moved by what they saw. Meanwhile, Earth's defense forces remained on alert. The President and Admiral Cruz watched the broadcast from Cooper and Rodriguez, which was being shared with Earth as well as the Concordat fleet. Will it be enough? Asked the President. It has to be, replied Cruz. The alternative is a war no one can win. Hours passed as the High Council debated. Finally, they reached a decision. The Concordat fleet began to move, but not toward Earth. Instead, they repositioned into a non-threatening formation. Frex Null addressed Cooper and Rodriguez. The Council has voted. Humans are reclassified as natural extremophiles rather than bioweapons. A wave of relief passed through the humans. Present. It wasn't complete acceptance, but it was a start. However, continued Vrex Null, your species must still be monitored. Your capabilities, while natural, present significant concerns for galactic security. We understand, said Cooper. We're willing to work with you to establish reasonable safeguards. All we ask is to be accepted as what we truly are, a natural species with the right to determine our own future. In the following days, Ambassador Greg Howard and Dr. Natalie Rivers negotiated new terms with the Concordat. Humanity gained recognition and limited rights to expand into space, while agreeing to certain monitoring protocols for mutual safety. Dr. Phillips and Karen Nelson were released and returned to Earth as heroes. Zeph Mall, despite facing criticism from some of his peers, requested permission to remain on Earth as a scientific liaison, the first alien to live permanently among humans. 1 month later, Zeph Mall sat in a classroom on Earth watching human children learn. The teacher had invited him to speak about his world, and the children bombarded him with curious questions. Their eagerness to learn about differences rather than fear them touched him deeply. What do you miss most about your home? Asked a small girl. The quiet, replied Zeph Mall truthfully. Your world is very loud. The children laughed, and Zeph Mall felt a strange warmth. He had come to study these beings, but found himself learning more about his own species in the process. That evening, as a Concordat ship departed Earth after a routine inspection, its sensors detected something their scientists found puzzling. Human genetic markers were showing subtle but accelerating changes. Evolution wasn't finished with humanity yet. The ship's captain recorded a note in the official species report. Humans continue to adapt at unprecedented rates. While not artificially engineered as previously believed, they remain a species of extreme importance and interest. Their homeworld continues to shape them in ways we cannot predict. Recommend ongoing observation with respect for their sovereignty. The report ended with a new classification. Species human, reclassified as natural extremophile, monitor with caution. In the vastness of space, the message traveled to countless worlds. The species that had feared humans as nightmarish, weapons now watched with cautious fascination as these children of a harsh world took their first steps into the stars. Not as the weapons they were feared to be, but as something perhaps more profound. Survivors who had conquered a world that, by all galactic standards, should have conquered them.